Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Emhauser. You can find me and this show all over the place: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify at Hawk Blogger. And in fact, I keep getting a wave of messages, DMs from people that are getting their Spotify Wrapped and their YouTube Wrapped, saying that they are the number one fan of the show, which is really, really humbling, honestly. Someone has watched 602 of our videos this year on YouTube, which is wild. And I think they're probably going to want to watch this one as well, because our guest EJ Snyder's back from Bootleg Football, man. And EJ, I can only imagine, if I'm getting those many messages, how many you and your buddy Brett are getting.
We're getting quite a few, and you're correct. Humbling is the only response, I think, to all that. I, typically take one of the top ones that comes in early and, say, hey, are you better than George here? He's got, this many hours or this many videos or whatever else. And then people respond to that and it kind of becomes a game and it sort of fills itself. But yeah, somebody watched 462 of our videos this year, and we only have 510. So
that is crazy. It's really amazing. I mean, you get people from all over the world, and you get people, and I think that is part of why we do this, right? It's to be able to, it's a isolating world, and you're finding people that connect on a subject that hopefully doesn't really matter that much, but matters enough that we could talk about it and have some fun with it. And, this particular division this year, the NFC West, is so worth talking about. And it's kind of fun. It's been for ages, EJ, it's been the Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay show, right? Like, those were the two. It always, preseason, all the talk was about them. The Seahawks were going to be 7.5 over under for wins. And lo and behold, all three teams, 9 wins. First time that's ever happened at this point in a season. What do you make of this division?
I think it's a really fun division, and being a fan of the Bears in the NFC North, it's very similar. 3 very good teams, the 2, I would say, best divisions in football, NFC West and NFC North. And it's really cool to see, I'd say, Mike Mack fulfill his promise, right? When he arrived, this is what everybody hoped would happen. It's what every fan base hopes with a new coach, but hope is very different than results. And he almost won the whole thing last year, probably should have. And I think that really sort of stuck in his craw that he got pipped at the line, and he said, not again. We're going to march until we get this thing. And it's made for a really fun race this year.
Would you say that each of the teams are better than they were a year ago?
Ooh, that's a good one. 49ers are so injury dependent, and that's any year, not just this year and last year. It feels like every 4 or 5 years, Kyle gets all of his guys healthy and they go to the Super Bowl, or,
right,
they go to the NFC Championship game. And it just sort of depends. We'll talk about him in a little bit in terms of how he is very committed to his system and plays it and just believes in it. The Rams, I would say so. And that I think that's maybe the biggest surprise, because it was so dependent on Stafford, whereas so goes Shanahan, so goes the Niners, so goes Stafford, so goes the Rams. And that is maybe more true for him than any other player in the NFL, which is why he's in the MVP conversation. If he's not there, that is not the same team.
No, of course. And the thing that jumps out to me there, so you'd say that the Rams being better is a bigger surprise than the Seahawks, because it feels like nationally that was kind of these 3 teams, that was the one that most people weren't giving a chance.
Yeah, again, you know me, I live in this market and have been a fan of what John's been doing in the draft for several years now in a row. He's definitely got his groove back, and was a big fan of Mike coming in as a coach. I think he was the top head coaching candidate in that cycle. I felt very much like him, like I did about DeMeco Ryans when he went to the Texans. This guy's going to be good as soon as he gets his shot. He got his shot. I think he's in the right place. When you have a stocked roster and you know how to maximize it, it's not a surprise to me. I think a lot of people forgot that they honestly probably should have won the division last year. It was a final week of the season thing. McVay he is a wily veteran coach and very, very skilled. And, they found a way to make it happen. But, rookie head coaches don't typically win the division in their first year. and he just about did it. So the fact that they, again, had another good draft on top of that, hopefully solve their issues. There's a lot of questions, right? Again, all the moving pieces had to work. The offensive line had to come together. They had to keep Darnold upright. Darnold had to take to the new offense, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but they were all there. If you squinted, you could see it. And the defense was just going to be better, period, in year two.
It's funny. We've got a bunch of stuff we'll cover here, but as you were talking about Mike Macdonald and you saying that you thought he was the top candidate in that cycle, that's how I felt as well. Honestly, that's part of how I got into doing this more daily, because I was just like, okay, this is going to be a good run with him on board. I will say I also thought Ryan Grubb was going to be a good hire, and I was very wrong about that. But the thing there is, EJ, the conventional wisdom still is hire an offensive coach. And if you look around, you look in this division, how many defensive coaches have been hired? The reason you hire offensive coaches is because, they're always going to get hired away. So you want to keep that. But you look at this division, how many defensive coaches have been hired away from San Francisco, been hired away from LA? And so is there maybe like a market inefficiency there, or like a misnomer about the fact that maybe just getting a great head coach from either side of the ball, it should be your goal?
I think it's probably the goal, no matter what, that people don't talk about, but they say, and then what? Everybody goes, yeah, you have to get the best person. You have to get the best overall coach, because you and I both know as you move from coordinator to head coach, the duties don't just double. It's like times 10. And you are responsible for so much more with the organization, with the team, with whatever else, that you really need a different skill set. We see it all the time. We see a lot of guys. I mean, Dennis Allen, was the head coach in New Orleans. He's now back to being a DC in Chicago. He's had success in both roles, but I would say he is a better coordinator. And that's true of many guys. Vic Fangio, I think, is the same way. Like, I think he is happier being a defensive coordinator because he's really, really like historically good at it. Head coach, it's a struggle. You just have to do a lot of things in a very different way. So I think, yes, getting the right person to lead your franchise is ultimately important. It's as important as getting a quarterback. And if you don't get it right, it will set you back a long time. We see it every year. We've already seen it a couple of times this year. Coaches get fired. That is, there's no cap for coaching salaries, but it is a lot of cash and a lot of investiture in heading down one particular road and then basically saying, wait, back up, we're turning left, we're going another way, and having to rebuild the program, because very rarely do you get somebody that comes along that's going to do the same thing. You fired the last guy for a reason. You want to go in a different direction. That means different personnel. That means different coaching. That means different roster. It's a huge change for an organization. And if you get it wrong, it will set you back a long time. So you have to get the right guy. Market inefficiency, I think you just need a really good football coach, because even Mike will tell you, like, part of how he learned about coaching defense was to go play with the offensive side of the ball a little bit, right? Whether officially or unofficially, he's always learning from whichever offense he's around. Hey, how are you trying to attack my stuff? And you have to have somebody that has that curiosity. I don't think coaches who are absolutely rigid on one side of the ball can be a success as a head coach. It's just too much to say, okay, I'm just going to hire somebody good and that's his half and this is my half. And, that's the way we're going to go.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating storyline after the season. Which of these three teams will actually have their full staff intact? Because I assume Robert Saleh is going somewhere else. I assume Chris Shula is going somewhere else. I think a lot of people assume Clint Kubiak's going somewhere else. I actually think he's going to stick around personally, but it's going to be an interesting test of this theory of which side of the ball do you want your coach to be on. Because look, the coaching just in this division has been fantastic. We talked about that all these teams have 9 wins. I'm curious if you took each one of these teams and you thought, okay, what's maybe an underrated part, maybe something that people don't think about how they got to 9 wins. Where would you start?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. That's where I'd start. It's one of my favorites. I always appreciate your questions, and this one is a good one. Your last one is also excellent, but it's really easy with the Rams. We've already talked about Stafford to say, hey, he's the reason first, last, and that's it. To dig a little bit deeper, because you said an underrated reason. That's why I like it. I'm going to say safety play for the Rams. Now, their defensive backs always play very well. And you talk about coaching talent, a guy that doesn't get mentioned a lot, although he should, is Aubrey Pleasant, who is their both assistant head coach and defensive backs coach. And he consistently maximizes guys that are not typically high draft picks or were high draft picks in the case of Emmanuel Forbes and were cast offs and showed up at the Rams and is now playing lights out. So Aubrey Pleasant always does a great job with defensive backs with the Rams, but I really think the safety spot for them has been huge. Now, Quentin Lake has been a glue guy for them for a couple of seasons now. Underrated player. We met him at Shrine Bowl, Carnell Lake's kid, played down in Southern California for college and was just a really solid player. Wasn't super surprised to see his success, but then he goes down with injury and you're like, oh, well, who do you have behind him? And they end up with the two Cams, Kinchen and Curl. And those guys have been targeted 71 times combined. They have 7 forced incompletions, 6 passes broken up, 4 interceptions, and they're allowing an NFL passer rating of 76 for opposing quarterbacks when they've been targeted, which is extremely low. I know that sounds kind of average. For defensive back play, that is exceptional. That's third, top quarter stuff. Kinchen's in particular is only allowing 1 reception every 17 times he's targeted. For a safety, when your coverage areas are that wide, you get a lot of receptions kind of tagged to you because you're just the closest guy. To have it, to basically have to do that 17 times before anybody gets a catch, he's playing outstanding football. And it's been a big reason that the Rams have been able to compete this year.
I love that. And I mean, Lake was a guy that I just, in studying the Rams all season and watching their stuff, he just jumped off the film. I mean, I thought his play against the Eagles early in the season was just electric. And pretty much every time I've watched that team, and when they lost him, I thought that was a pretty big loss. But now they get back Akella Witherspoon, who has, was a really big part of their finish last year. He did not play that well against the Panthers. And Emmanuel Forbes, I mean, I know you're talking about safeties. I'm talking about corners here, but Emmanuel Forbes was fantastic when he played against the Seahawks in that game, and then was really crashed back to earth against the Panthers. And I don't exactly know what to expect the rest of the year from him, but I've always been a Kobe Durant fan. I think they've got a lot of these secondary players that the weight, and another guy that they use. Oh my gosh, Jalen McCullough. Is that, am I getting that? Like, they just have these guys that nobody really knows, but they seem to just always be close to the ball. They're not getting burned. And it's not like the Rams pass rush has been quite as dominant as I thought it would. So in some ways, I feel like their coverage and their safety play in particular has been a big part of why their defense has been so good this year. And I love that that's where you went, because most people would talk about Stafford and the offense. I agree. That would be an underrated part. Okay. Next team, next underrated part.
I'm gonna go Hawks for this one. We'll do a Hawks sandwich here. The meat, what everybody really wants to talk about everywhere. Anyways, offensive line improvement. Last year, the Seahawks interior offensive line was in the worst NFL neighborhood possible. If you were anywhere near the Seahawks in terms of your interior offensive line performance, you wanted to move. You didn't want to stay in that neighborhood. Well, a bunch of things happened again. Cross and Lucas got healthy, and wait, I'm talking about interior. Yeah, but when the exterior guys get healthy, the interior guys don't have to worry about that as much, so they can focus on what they're doing, and it just sort of elevates the entire line. They drafted Gray Zabel in the first round. Obviously, he's been a hit. Not unsurprising, but not guaranteed either. We've said that about a lot of guys. Oh, he's guaranteed. He's going to be an 8-9 year starter, and then they don't play so well. Hasn't been the case with Gray Zabel. He's been pretty much good from day one and continuing to get better. Sundell started off the year really strong at center. He got hurt, and Oluwatimi came in and has been holding it up. So they're holding down that spot. Look, Anthony Bradford's Anthony Bradford. He's not great. He continues to be a problem. But when he's the only problem and there aren't multiple other problems around him, it's less of an issue. And it's working. Seattle's allowing the second fewest sacks per game in the NFL, and that's key to Darnold's game working. Everybody knew that. You have to keep him upright. You have to keep him away from pressure. He's a very different quarterback if he's pressured. So the offensive line is sort of, lock and key to the overall offensive strategy of making this work. And again, everybody can have hindsight and look back and go, oh yeah, we knew Darnold was going to work in this offense. There are a lot of people saying he could work in this offense, but that's not a sure thing. So to me, that offensive line improvement, which is multiple different pieces, draft picks, guys getting healthy, moving guys around in different spots, having young centers play pretty well. There's a lot of things, but they're working in concert the way they need to. And the overall result is what everybody's seen on the field from the Seahawks this year is a very competent offense that's putting up a lot of points. And that's putting a ton of pressure on other teams, especially when you pair it with Mike Mack's defense.
Yeah, I think I saw that the Seahawks have 7 points fewer than the number one scoring offense in the league, which is kind of crazy to think of. Quick question, follow up on the Anthony Bradford piece, because he is persona non grata amongst most Seahawks fans. Like they've seen all the low lights. He has a lot of really low lights. He also is part of an offensive line that is, last I checked, 7th in pass protection composite ratings. Ben Baldwin puts up there. Has only allowed 15 sacks in the season. Would you, knowing that after this week they have a pretty tough finishing stretch, would you entertain trying out a different Christian Haynes or Jalen Synder? Like, all the way this point in the season, would you start messing around with that position?
I wouldn't, because it's working. Like, again, when you dig into the numbers, just raw numbers, I'm not talking about tape, like Bradford's performance in terms of pressures given up and Cross's performance are very similar, a lot more similar than a lot of fans would like to speak about. But look, Cross is a tackle and Bradford's an interior offensive lineman, and no quarterback loves pressure in his face immediately. And that's what happens if you lose quickly on the interior offensive line. And when you talk about lowlights with Bradford, look, lots of offensive linemen lose. The other guys get paid too, but you want to lose slowly and predictably. And I know that doesn't sound great, but it's like die slowly, right? That's an offensive line-ism. Don't die fast. Like, don't just whiff and let pressure in your face, inside or outside. But inside, it's there a step quicker, and it just ruins offenses. So that's what people see with Bradford, and that's why he takes more heat than Cross does out there on the edge. Again, Cross is typically going against the number one rusher on another team. And, would I change it? No. Offensive line, it's kind of like pitchers. I don't know if you follow baseball, but everybody's pretty superstitious. And if those 5 guys are sitting in that order on the bench and the offense is working, which it clearly is, I'm not throwing extra stuff in the cake batter at this point.
It's kind of a funny one for people that do follow the Seahawks closely, but I mentioned that Will Fries actually has allowed more pressures this year than Anthony Bradford by quite a bit, and you're paying a lot less for those pressures that Anthony Bradford is allowing. So, okay, let's get to the Rams. What is the underrated part of how they? Oh, sorry, we already did the Rams. Let's get to the 49ers. What's the underrated part of how they've gotten to 9 wins?
For me, it's coaching. And again, everybody's going to look at the product on the field. And the thing that impressed me the most was the defense in the middle of the season in terms of how Robert Saleh had those guys performing. If you looked, they had a primetime game, and I put out a tweet at that point and said, hey, how many of these guys do you think non-Rams fan or non-Niners fans or even casual Niners fans actually could name out of 11 starters on defense? And it's about 4. Like, harder core fans, I don't think they're getting all 11. Like, they weren't at that point. And it's a real credit to Robert Saleh, having him back in the fold, handing him back the DC reins. That defense fell off a cliff last year. It needed to be stabilized, restabilized, whatever you want to say. And it's been huge. And he's got a lot of the young guys playing well. Again, they're not getting great pressure. They lost their top sack threat, but he still has those guys playing very well. Alfred Collins, Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, Upton Stout. Those are all young players they have at all levels of that defense. And they're a top 10 scoring defense, which is what really matters in the NFL. That's the brass tacks. So you got him on the defensive side, Shanahan on the offensive side. Again, I sort of teased it in the beginning. He just powers through. He believes in his principles. He believes in his offense. He puts a ton of faith in veterans. And when those guys are on the field, they have to execute a very complex system. And when they do, it's very difficult to stop. We've seen the results year after year. He has most of those guys out there. Receivers are a bit of a question for them, but he's got Kittle back. CMC's stayed healthy. They're getting it done. He's lost more games to injury than all but 2 other teams in terms of the San Francisco 49ers as a whole, offense and defense. And they are still where they are competing again. And like you said, in one of the toughest divisions in football late in the game, that's a great head coaching job by Shanahan. I know people don't want to hear it. I know people say he's overrated, but like they would not be there. If you look at that roster and all the injuries they've had on top of that, that's probably a bottom 10 team in the NFL. And instead they're competing for the division title in either the toughest or the second toughest division in football. I mean, come on, folks. That's what coaching is. That's the difference.
There's no question, EJ. I mean, I have not always been the biggest Kyle Shanahan fan, at least the guy and how he shows up, but I have tons of respect for what they've done. I think most teams, if they just lost the players on defense that the 49ers lost this year, their season would be over. Correct. To have that and have your starting quarterback gone for most of the season as well, and your best receiver never coming back for the season, and your best tight end, like what they've done is remarkable. And the fact that the 49ers, dead last in the NFL in pressure rate, dead last in the NFL in sack rate, and they are top 10 in scoring defense. What are we talking about? Like, that's not real. It's really been a remarkable job. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that team in a bit. But I kind of look at these teams, and you look at the final stretch. The last 5 games for the Seahawks and Rams. I think it's 4 games for the 49ers since they have a bye week this week. And everyone looks at the interdivision matchups, right? Seattle versus the Rams and Seattle versus San Francisco. And how is that going to kind of determine the division? But what is maybe a game where another team outside of the division could end up causing this race to go a different way? And you can go for any of those 3 teams. We can kind of go through each of them.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the Niners. We'll just stay there. They have games against both the second place team in the AFC, the Colts, and the upstart Bears. The Bears are an odd team this year, but not to be taken lightly. Ben Johnson has those guys believing that they can be anybody on any given day, and they can. They've proved it. So that's in their final, like you said, 4 games. The other 2 teams have 5. Either one of those could tip San Francisco's apple cart in a bad way. The Titans, they sort of get the Titans freebie out of their last 4, but the other 3 are the Colts, Chicago, and Seattle. That is not an easy finishing stretch as it goes, and it will play into how this race turns out in the end. The Rams have it slightly easier. Of their final 5, they go Cards, Lions, Hawks, Falcons, and then Cards again. Apparently they just want to play all the bird teams in the last 5 games. The Lions could take a game from them pretty easily if they're not careful. Obviously the Hawks game is the one, like you said, that everybody's pointing to. The Cardinals, I'm not as worried about, neither with the Falcons. They're not playing great football right now, either one of those teams, but games to watch, Lions for sure. And then of course the Hawks game for them. And in terms of Seattle's finishing stretch, final 5 is Falcons, Colts, Rams, Panthers, and Niners. Every game except the Falcons is going to require Seattle to bring it. Carolina is the one to watch for me, not just because of beat the Rams, but because of how they play. If the Hawks overlook Carolina, they look at the rest of that stretch and they go, okay, we got to concentrate on these other games. Carolina's going to come out and punch you in the mouth. The Panthers are 12th in the league in terms of run between the tackles at about 10 per game. That's the top quarter of the league in number of overall runs as well, 28. They ran it 40 times against the Rams, and they only trail the league leading Bills by 3 rushes per game, although I think they're currently 8th. It's the difference of 3 runs per game. So the Panthers, in a weird way, are kind of like the 49ers. They know who they are. They're not going to panic and start throwing it all over the yard. They're going to run it right down your throat. And you could see the Rams defenders in that game kind of go, wait, don't you realize that explosives are the thing? You're going to run it again. You already ran it 25 times, man. That's, in some games, that's 2 games worth of rushes. And they ran it another 15 times in that game. So they will run it down your throat. And the Seahawks are easily capable of stopping that defensively, but you have to buckle your chin strap and show up.
Yeah, I would make the case that the Rams lost to the Panthers because the 49ers beat the Panthers. And one of the things that came out of that game was Rico Dowdle getting an apology from his head coach for not doing exactly what you're saying, EJ, like stick to who they are. And then they came out and they bullied the Rams. And
Yep.
There's a lot of talk of, oh my gosh, did the Vikings expose this weakness of the Hawks in terms of the blitzes and getting to Sam Darnold? And like, good luck being a Brian Flores defense, like
Right.
because he does well at it. But running the ball against the Rams, that's one to watch. I found when I was looking yesterday, the Seahawks' lowest stuffed rate when they lost yards or gained 0 yards on their running plays, their lowest stuff rate of the season, 5.2%, came against the Rams. And I wonder if the next time they play, if the game plan might look a little bit more like what Carolina did in this one. So fascinating stuff there. And I wonder a little bit about the Arizona Cardinals. If I'm a Rams fan, I'm going to be worried. Any division matchup's tough.
Sure.
The Cardinals have been in a lot of these games since Jacoby Brissett's been the quarterback, and the Cardinals kind of had the Rams number last year. Like they blew him out the first time, and they almost beat him in a game that meant nothing to them the last game, like toward the end of the season. And if it didn't, Kyler Murray bounce it off of Trey McBride's helmet, they would have beat him in LA in a game that LA needed. So, I think you're probably right. I am going to, keep an eye on those Cardinals games as well. Now, everyone's like focused on, okay, who's going to win the division? And maybe one of these teams will get the number 1 overall seed. They'll get home field advantage throughout. It feels to me like any of these teams could beat any of the other teams, whether they're at home or on the road. So of these teams, which do you think home field, forget the bye week, that matters for everybody. Sure. But which of these teams does home field matter most for their chances in the playoffs?
It's got to be Seattle for me, and that's not just because I'm on a Hawks podcast. Seattle is easily the loudest of the 3 stadiums. I've been to games in each of them. The weather's more likely to play a part in Seattle than it is either. Obviously, SoFi's got the roof, but in Santa Clara, look, the Super Bowl's there this year for a reason. It's typically nice late in the year. It can be cold or chilly, but it's not like it is up here. If you get into a game where it is wet, there's some wind blowing, messing with the kicking game. We've started to see it really. It's ticked up over the last 2 weeks in the NFL in general. The game in the Meadowlands last week was miserable. It was, very windy, very cold, and it started pouring at the end of the game, and it affected the game. The drops, players slipping, kicking game was a complete adventure. We'll just put it that way. So I really think Seattle could probably have the biggest swing. And in terms of home support, the Rams games are usually about a 50-50 split for the Rams and whoever's in town. Everybody loves to go to SoFi, and I totally understand. It's a great stadium, cool place to see a game. Get some sunshine if you maybe live in the upper Midwest and your team plays the Rams. Sure, go for it. But in terms of like pure bias for the home team, it's got to be Seattle.
Yeah, and I haven't even really looked at how these teams have done on the road. Obviously, Seattle has been terrific on the road since Mike McDonald's been here, but I tend to agree with you. I feel like if you look at it in terms of who can win on the road, I think any of them can. Who gets the biggest boost being home? Probably the Seahawks. So that I do think makes some sense. In fact, every time the Seahawks have gone to the Super Bowl, they have had the number 1 seed and home field advantage throughout. So, if you want history to be a guide, that might be one of the things to look at. We're talking to EJ Snyder of Bootleg Football. So I talked about how the Panthers ran the ball. You talked about how the Panthers ran the ball against the Rams. Anything from that you think other teams, including the Seahawks, might be able to take away and use to help chip away at what's been one of the best defenses in the NFL?
For sure. It's a copycat league. And in terms of how Carolina did it, it wasn't fancy in any stretch. It was volume, not efficiency. And typically the NFL has shifted even in the run game with the sort of reinvigoration of the run game this year. It's been more about explosives in the run game. It's not how many times you run it or how many yards you get. It's how efficient you are. Panthers weren't super efficient, and they just didn't give up on it because it is their style. It is their mantra. I mean, keep pounding is what, their slogan. And they just did. They ran it 40 times, 4.1 yards a carry. Again, not super efficient, but they're just not going to give up on it. And they ran the balls 19 times between the tackle, and they were pretty limited. They ended up about 3.5 yards a carry with all of those runs. But what that did was set up their success on outside zone runs where they had a much higher efficiency, 5.3 yards per carry. So almost an extra couple of yards per carry when they went outside. But if they just ran outside, that wouldn't have worked. It was that they pounded and pounded and pounded, and defenders get, so, you've watched plenty of football, Brian. Defenders get when there's that kind of runs and that many of them, you got to set, right? You got to get the extra hand down. You got to get your pads down. You got to jump. You got to have initiative. And when you do that, and then you go outside, those defenders are engaged on the inside, and you have numbers on the outside, basically, because those guys are stuck in the middle because they've been, just lathering up, trying to stop, 15, 20 runs between the tackles. And the Panthers use that. And again, they don't panic. They don't go away from that because they know they can't throw the ball the way that they would need to in the fourth quarter to catch up. If they beat you, it is going to be a physical beating. It is going to be attrition. They are literally going to run over your face. Now, is that a lesson? Sure. Can most teams do that? It really depends on your style. If you're not a punishing run team, you can't just go, okay, guys, I know we ran it 12 times last week, only 3 times in the fourth quarter, but we're going to run it 10 times a quarter. It's not a sort of switch you can flip. You talked about the offensive line earlier where, would you make a change? You can't just come in. You can re-emphasize it, and you can try and do it strategically, which is what most teams try and do, again, to get those explosives. But it wasn't explosives that beat the Rams. It was just bludgeoning.
Yeah. I look at the Rams and I see a team that struggled with defending the run quite a bit last year and went and got Poona Ford. And I was like, well, yeah, Poona Ford's better than Bobby Brown, but is he really like that much better than Bobby Brown? But then they also added Nate Landman, who ended up being, I liked him at Atlanta. Atlanta let some real talent leave. Nate Landman, Drew Dahlman. Ryan Newsels, I think New Zealand's been fine at center, but I'm sure the Bears are pretty happy. And I know the Rams are pretty happy about who the Falcons let go out the door. And I kind of wonder, I look at that Rams team and I just wonder if there's parts of it that are so scheme dependent that if you can establish a physical run game against them, that's the key, because their secondary and the amount of dime that they play, over 50% against the Seahawks in that game, they're kind of daring you to run. So, as much as Braden Fisk, really good pass rusher, not necessarily the best run defender, and some of these other guys as well, I do feel like that's going to be a storyline going through. And I don't necessarily feel that way about the Seahawks defense. I look at that defense and I'm like, well, you can't really run against them.
Nope.
Well, you can't really pass. You can't go heavy. You can't go light. That's where, for me, those two defenses separate a little bit, even if the numbers, are pretty equal across both of them.
Yeah, and I would say the talent level as well, Brian. When you're talking about the Hawks versus the Rams, we talk about all those unheralded guys to the Rams that are playing really well and, making that unit work as a whole. You talk about the Hawks in terms of defense and where they've put their picks in recent years. They have a lot of high-profile talent on that defense that is working out, and also guys that were high-profile picks on other teams like Tank Lawrence, who are now reinvigorated. There's a lot of former first-round picks on that defense. There's just a lot of dudes, and scheme is super important, but this is the classic X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's. If you're looking at Jimmy's and Joe's, the Seattle defense is loaded athletically with pedigree and guys that are big, can hit, can move, are versatile. The addition of Nick Emmanwori has been really, really big because they can just do so many things with him. It's we're officially in dime, but that guy's almost 230 pounds, which outweighs most linebackers, and runs like a safety. Call it dime if you want to. We could call it base if we really wanted to get back to it. Oh, yeah, and he's fast enough to cover running backs out of the backfield. So, pick your poison. Go for it.
We got to take a detour on Nick Emmanwori because, you were at the combine and watched what he did there, which was just, I've never seen a Marvel superhero in person, but it was pretty damn close.
Oh yeah, you have. He plays for Seattle.
When you have, how they flash up the athletic comps, the day before, I think Shamar Stewart had been up there and they were flashing. Who was the pass rusher? It was another edge rusher they were comparing him to, but a super athletic guy. And then Nick Emmanwori, a defensive player, and they're like, the closest guy is DK Metcalf. It was crazy. And Now, Mike McDonald, we're talking to him this week, and he's like, yeah, we've been playing him at 9 tech and 5 tech, and we don't really know. We're making it up as we go because we've never had anybody like him. And this is the same guy that coached Kyle Hamilton and all the things that Kyle Hamilton can do. We just saw him lock up Justin Jefferson this past week. We've seen him run with Jalen Knoll 45 yards downfield. Is there another player that you can recall that kind of can do the things that he can do?
Not all told, and that's what makes him different. In slices, are there guys athletically that are like him? Yes. Have they performed like him on the field? No. Did even guys that approach that level, I'm not going to say surpass it because I can't think of anybody that surpasses it right now. Did they do it in their rookie, halfway through their rookie season with a heavier load than certainly playbook wise than they had in college by far, not just because of the jump from college to the NFL, but also because of what Mike told you, which is we're opening up the book on this guy. We're using him as a pass rusher. He's the queen on the chessboard, right? You can put him anywhere and do anything with him. And there are very few players that are that good. There are no players that are both that good, that physically gifted, and came on that quickly. Even Kyle Hamilton's first year was not great. And he's not as physically gifted as Emmanwori. Like, he's almost as tall. He's not as heavy, and he's not as fast. Like, he's a very good athlete. Don't get me wrong. This is not Kyle Hamilton slander. This is Nick Emmanwori is a space alien. And, I stood right next to the vertical jump and posted it in slow motion. It just looked like he kept going up. I don't think I've seen a guy that big and that heavy just kind of flow. I mean, NBA, right? That's the only thing you can compare it to is guys taking off the foul line, and that guy comes and, stands next to you at the timeout, and you're like, oh my God, he's like 6'7", 255. Like, those guys are all over the NBA. In the NFL, not so much. And to see his bursts, just his athletic profile. And then everybody was like, yeah, but it's going to take a while. It took like 8 games. Like, that combination. Nah, there's nobody else like that.
Yeah, and at 21 years old, where will we go with Nick Emmanwori? It's gonna be fun to watch.
Highest paid safety in the NFL. That's where.
And
where it's gonna go.
It's gonna be interesting. I haven't thought about this, but you say that. You know how teams play the game of how many snaps they've gotten at a certain position in order to set their franchise tag number? And they're always trying to play them at the cheapest position. They're going to try to say he's a linebacker.
Speaking of that, if I was Darnell Washington, the tight end for the Steelers, who's 3'11" and blocks more, I'd be like, hey, man, I saw what free agent right tackles got paid last year. They got like $25 million. Tight ends don't get $25 million.
Right.
I'm a tackle, man. Don't call me a tight end.
Yes, that is a good one. I was a big Darnell Washington fan, but not nearly as big as Darnell Washington. So I got a fun one for you, and then we're gonna go off book. But there's a game. You can only choose one.
I hate this game.
We go towards the last 5 games of the season for the Seahawks. There's this moment where JSN has his first quiet game last week against the Vikings. And I think it got a lot of Seahawks fans nervous, and they didn't like it, right? Of course, they won 26-0, but JSN didn't put up his numbers, so people got nervous. At the same time, the Seahawks running game has gone from one of the bottom 5 to 7 in terms of efficiency to top 10 over the last 4 weeks, I should say, in terms of whether it's EPA, whether it's success rate. They're top 5 when it comes to rushing yards and explosive rushes. So you can only have one the rest of the way for the Seahawks. Either JSN, who, by the way, was just named Player of the Month, Offensive Player of the Month. Well, I guess that was for October. Sorry, I'm reading a tweet about Jason Myers, and I misread it about him. But JSN can either continue to be a Player of the Month level guy, or the Seahawks find a reliable run game. Which one would benefit the Seahawks the most?
Yeah, I said that this was my favorite question, and it's my favorite question because I hate it, if that makes sense.
That was the goal. That was the goal, EJ.
You win. Absolutely. You got to pick the right weapon for the battle that they're going to fight. And we talked about, games inside this time of year versus games outside. And the reason I say it depends on the day is because JSN is having such an explosive over the top season, one like we haven't really ever seen from a wide receiver, that he could literally win you a game on any given day. He could be the difference maker. But if the Hawks end up in that late season slugfest game, like I talked about, where it's wet, the footing is bad, it's super windy, which wreaks havoc on any passing game. It's cold. It's hard to hold on to the ball. Passing games can get inconsistent. It's not JSN's fault. He's probably still going to be, beating his guy, but can you get him the ball 25 yards downfield consistently in those conditions? You can't. So, both is always the right answer. You want to have balance on your offense, but having a reliable run game, especially in the playoffs, is a huge comfort to a team. So the bottom line is it's probably a very, very good sign for the Hawks that over the last month, you said Seahawks fans are worried about JSN having a bad game against the Vikings. Seahawks fans are really worried about no run game for basically the beginning of the season, or an inconsistent running game. The fact that it's gotten consistent, like EPA or anything else, doesn't really matter. You can watch film and say they are now on a roll with the run game. That's probably a bigger deal overall to their chances because they have some balance, right? Because as good as any player is, you can take them away. If you devote enough resources, if you go, double JSN, like that's your defense, double JSN, don't care where he goes on the field, it's 2 guys on him, we'll take our chances everywhere else. You can limit his effectiveness. Can you shut him down completely? No, but we've seen it with great players throughout the league. Justin Jefferson, when he was on an absolute roll, it was like, make sure JJ doesn't go for 170 and 2 scores. And if he doesn't, if he goes for like 115 and 1 score, we'll probably beat the Vikings because they're going to try and get him the ball. Whereas if you have balance between, hey, we can run it down your throat, and that, so you're going to have to bring some guys or we're just going to keep doing it. And when you do, we have JSN over the top. That's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And like I mentioned stuffed rate earlier, which, I mean, obviously you want explosive runs and you want run efficiency and all that. But what really stuck out to me early in the season with the Seahawks run game is how often they were getting 0 or negative yards. They were getting stuffed. It was 31% in week 2 against the Steelers. It was 31% against the Jags. 25, 26, like a lot of more than a quarter of their runs were resulting in 0 or negative yards. The last few games, you're talking about the Titans, it was 15%. I mentioned 5% against the Rams, 19% against the Cardinals. It was 21% against the Vikings, which is not great, but certainly not 30%. And so even the fact that they're getting more 2nd and 8s instead of 2nd and 10s, it's just an easier play calling situation to find yourself in.
100%.
So I gotta ask. There's a few things I gotta dive in with you about EJ, and
sure.
We're talking to EJ Snyder of Bootleg Football, and let's start with the 49ers, because this is the team where I think a lot of people still look at this as a 2-team race. All 3 teams have 9 wins. The 49ers, you said, don't have the toughest of the 3 in their finishing stretch. They have some home games coming up. They got their bye week. And yet I think people just look at the Seahawks and the Rams and are like, these are better teams. So how seriously should people be taking the 49ers as a team that could sneak in there and end up winning this division?
Winning the division is one thing, but the NFC race, the NFC is the power conference this year overall. The AFC has its high stars, but not as much depth. And some of the teams that we really expected to be tremendous in the AFC have not delivered, which happens every year. But I think you got to be, if you're in the NFC West, you got to be in the top 2, right? Because that pretty much is going to get you with these teams' records into the playoffs. Whereas one of these two divisions is going to put 3 teams up the board. And if that's the case, you might only get 1 from the other one. You might get 2, but if you're the 3rd team, you're not sitting pretty. So I think San Francisco has to be taken very seriously for all the reasons that we said. Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. They've got a chance to get a little bit healthier over the bye here. Obviously, the big players on defense aren't coming back, but it does matter this late in the year to get a little bit of a rest. And all Seattle fans have to do is look back to last year and look at getting pipped by the Rams right at the end. Again, we got it, we don't got it. And I think the Niners could do that to the Rams this year in a sort of merry-go-round moment. You talked about the Cards earlier having the Rams number. Well, the Rams had the Seahawks number, and so round and round and round we go in the NFC West as usual. But I think they are definitely a threat to, continue to play well. Purdy, when he came back, looked pretty rusty for the first half, started to heat up a little bit in the second half. If he starts to hit his stride and get to be closer to the level he was in previous years where he was super efficient, that's a very dangerous team. And again, people are going to look at it with the names and go, well, like you said, Rams have more guys, Seahawks have more guys. They've been more dominant in their performances. The 49ers have kind of been muddling along in the background. That's a team you really want to worry about, especially when Kyle Shanahan is your coach at the end of the year, because he could knock one. I don't know about both of them off, but he could knock one of them out of the second peg, and that would mean out of the playoffs, which would be, at this point, a pretty large upset.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of their numbers here, and one of the things, it's weird. You think of Kyle Shanahan, you think offense, right? And you think they're going to be good there. They're 14th in scoring. They're 17th in yards per play. But then they're third in third down conversions. 48% third down conversion rate is insane, EJ. That's like very, very good. The fact that there's two teams higher than that's kind of insane as well. But part of the story there is they're living in third down. Like they are kind of living on this razor's edge and then finding a way to kind of push forward. They are 31st in the NFL in yards per rush. You think about Christian McCaffrey this year and you think, oh my God, this guy's been so productive. He hasn't been that efficient though, on the ground. And so, I go through some of these numbers and I'm like, what is the team that's going to be a good matchup for them in the playoffs where that offense will, be good enough or have the right things to be able to succeed? Do you have any ideas there about like who would they match up well with? Like the Bears, for example, I'm really curious about. Like that's the next team I want to ask you about, by the way. But
sure.
What is the good matchup for the 49ers offense?
Well, it's dependent first on the 49ers continuing to get more efficient with the pass game, because it was probably 5 weeks ago I put out a tweet that said, look, the entire boat is built out of CMC in San Francisco. And that's not a prescient quote. Just watch the film. Like it's CMC left, CMC right, CMC up the middle. And you said he hasn't been super explosive or efficient, but he is getting it through volume because he is a bigger percentage of their offense, or at least he was at the time that I put that out, than any other player in the NFL is of their offense in terms of just plain old touches, yards, percentage of times they turn to him and say, fix it, especially on third down. And he finds a way because he is a transcendent player and he's been healthy, but it is so dependent on him that they need to get Brock Purdy back. They need to get a little bit more of that wide receiving game kind of dialed up. It can't just be third and Juwan, and take some of that pressure off CMC, because again, like I said about JSN, you can stop any player you want to. If you want to commit 9 players to the box and say, we're going to stop CMC from running, make you at least just throw to him where he's still super effective. That's something we can live with. So I would say a team that's silly enough to not try and do that, to just go, oh, we're going to let CMC do what he does. If he does what he does and Brock is, just a slice more efficient. Like we saw it when Brock went down. It's like, they're done. It's Mac Jones, right? They've lost their defensive play. Like this, many people, including me, said it's over 49ers next year. Yeah. And Mac came in and he was super tough. Had to hang in the pocket because receivers weren't getting open soon. So he had to take a hit before he threw the ball over and over and over again. But he was efficient. Like he hit the little stuff over the middle. He kept the chains moving. He manufactured drives for them and they won some games. And it was like, oh, like, all right, if they can do that. And then maybe if Purdy comes back, gets that little bit of downfield passing, because he's not been great in downfield passing this year, even when he has been on the field. Playoffs are such a different animal, right?
They are.
Because you can grind it away and be, games are tighter. Typically get down 6 points, 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Got to get a touchdown, right? It's like, well, we haven't been explosive all year, but can we get a big one over the top to Ricky Pearsall? Maybe. Can George Kittle break a tackle and go 45 and score? He can still at this point. Like, it comes down to those kind of pressure moments. And these are veteran guys with veteran coaches. Again, you don't want to let them in. It's the kind of team you do not want to let into the playoffs, because if you do, they're gonna wreck some shop. They might not win one, but they're gonna make it very hard for you to win one.
Yeah, they like, when I look at their numbers a little bit, it is just, they are a weird football team.
Yes.
Like, I'm looking at this, like, oh well, he must be getting turnovers, and that's, oh nope, they're 22nd in the NFL in turnover margin. Well, like, their defense was really bad at defending the run, so I'm sure that's a problem. Nope, they're pretty good at defending the run. It's their pass defense, and then, like, it starts being like, oh well, they have the second fewest penalties per game on offense, so they're not hurting themselves on things like that. And then this third down conversion stuff, it's a little bit of a house of cards, and that's why the coaching is so impressive, right? Of what they've been able to do. And I cannot look at that team with no pass rush, with, I think, a more vulnerable pass protection than the numbers even imply, and say, yep, this is a team that you really have to fear, any more than you do any other team in the NFL. But the fact of the matter is, they got 9 wins. They've been doing it. So Bears fit in this category of another team that, I'll be honest, EJ, like, I saw the wins. I kept seeing the wins. And there's been this running joke with some of my co-hosts where they're big Caleb Williams fans. And I've been kind of a Caleb Williams doubter. I'm like, this guy, he's the dude perfect of quarterbacks. He can make all these crazy throws, but you ask him to play in structure, and I have not seen it yet. And he'll be 11 of 27 in the third quarter, and I'm texting them like, ha ha ha. And then the fourth quarter comes, and he makes some kind of crazy play to Colston Level to win a game, and they're like, ha ha ha. So I mean, that what they did to the Eagles was by far the most impressive thing I've seen all season. And to use an Athletic Football Show statement, the Bears, you've got my attention. So what is the Bears? What are the Bears?
What are the Bears? That's a great question. Even for a guy that covers the Bears every week, on my Bears podcast, Bear Era, they have been an enigma, but a super entertaining one. And they are progressing, I would say, under the radar, but very, very well. This team is exactly where Ben wants it right now. And that's Ben Johnson. He has made all the difference. I pulled up some numbers between anybody doubting Ben Johnson. I pulled up where the Bears were last year for offensive ranks and where they are this year. Too long didn't read version. Don't doubt Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is the one. He is Neo. It's working out. But again, he was asking Caleb to do something very, very different than Caleb's really ever done. Even in college, when he was a great transcendent player at multiple stops, he wasn't asked to do under center play action. And Ben was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. I know you can do it, but I'm going to give you the offensive line to do that, which again is a huge thing for the Bears, much like the mirror of the Seahawks issue we talked about. They completely rebuilt the offensive line, brought in Joe Thuney, Dahlman, Jonah Jackson. Again, Darnell Wright was always good, but if he was the only good one, that's not a very good line. This year, it's been so much better. Caleb has been a magician in terms of getting out of sacks. He is probably the strongest quarterback in the lower half in the league, and that's a league with a guy like Jalen Hurts in it. He has uncanny lower body strength, but you said you haven't seen it. Well, the answer is you probably haven't been watching, and most people haven't. It has progressed throughout the year, and it started off terrible, and everybody went, this isn't going to work. And every week, Ben said, no, he's doing what I want him to do. He's looking in the right places. He's going through the plays as I wish him to do it. And he's getting better at it. Everybody's like, Ben, he's really not. And each week you would see it, and it would start to come together. It wasn't just Caleb. It never is with the passing game. There's so many variables, but the offensive line has been great for most of the year. The receivers weren't on the same page pretty early. Then there was a little run in the middle of the season where there were some drops, and now you're really starting to see it because Ben can scheme those guys open. We talked about Mike being a defensive coach that understands offense. Ben is an offensive coach that understands defense. And he has been prying them apart with regularity all season long. Whether or not the offense has been hitting those, different thing entirely. But if, you spend time with all 22 like I do, you're like, oh man, like if Caleb had seen that again early in the season, now he's seeing it and he can hit it. He has that physical ability. And it feels to me, the biggest shift for me recently, very recently, over the last couple of weeks, is trying to run Swift between the tackles is a terrible idea. He's just not a good player between the tackles. He's a good football player. He's a very good football player. And he is great outside and in space. In the passing game too. Can be a difference maker there. But he is not good between the tackles, and he never has been. And Ben knows this, which is the crazy thing, is he had him in Detroit. And he talked to any Eagles fans, speaking of the Eagles, and they're like, yeah, we know we had him. That's why we got rid of him. And I've been like, you need to get the between the tackles carries to somebody else. Well, it turns out somebody else is Kyle Monangai, who is the third leading rusher in the Big Ten. And is that kind of runner, but they just weren't giving him touches. Well, lo and behold, last week, they finally gave him the touches, and look what happened. Rips off like 130 yards, a touchdown, just bowls people over, more like that Carolina style. You pair that with Swift still being effective, sometimes between the tackles, but more so outside. Guys like Colston Loveland, who Ben has been resolute. Again, started off the season injured. He's been like, nope, we picked him for a reason. He's got great skills. He's my guy. And even when he only had a few pass receptions in the first part of the year, you could see that Ben trusted Colston in like game 4, game on the line. He's throwing him the ball. Like, we need this first down. Not typical for a rookie. And he's just gotten healthier and better and more involved. And now you start to see that balance. Everything's kind of coming together. And folks like yourself around the country are going, wait, the Bears are like actually good, not just like some kind of meme good. And it's like, no, they're starting again. The defense has had its struggles, especially with injury. They have not been as effective. Dennis Allen, I feel for him, because like you're coming into a secondary that you think is loaded. You're like, you got Kyler Gordon, you got Jalen Johnson, you got, Brisker coming back from injury. You got Kevin Byard as a veteran presence. You got Tyreek Stevenson, who's probably going to fit better in this defense. Like, you even got Terrell Smith as a backup. Like, and you drafted Zay Frazier in the 5th round. You're fine. Like week 2, you're down to outside cornerback 6. And you're like, well, make it up. They have had to. They're starting to get guys healthy, just like some of the other teams we mentioned. And that's going to be a big deal for Dennis Allen, because the defense has been, putting it together with baling wire and duct tape for most of the year. Now they're getting some guys back, and the offense is really starting to roll in the way that Ben wants it to. Again, not a team you're really going to want to face going down the stretch, because look, it's been 30 years. I give everybody a full pass. Like, we don't have to worry about them. You do this year. You have to worry about them. They're a real football team.
It was mind blowing to me that it was the first time since '85 that they had 200-yard rushers. Like, that was crazy. But last thing for you here, EJ, on this note is, Seahawks fans are dreaming about running the table, tough finishing stretch. But if they get there, they own their destiny to win the division. But they need the Bears to drop at least one game for them to have a chance at the number 1 seed. What do you think happens with the Bears? Have a pretty tough finishing stretch as well. I think a couple against the Packers. I think they've got the Lions. Like, what do you think happens there?
I don't think Chicago runs the table. That's for sure. I didn't think my prediction in our summer series this year was that the Bears would be, if the Bears are over 500 and Caleb showed progress, that would be a win. That would be good. That would be stabilization. Offensive line works. Caleb shows progress doing what Ben wants to do. And Ben institutes, I don't know, half of his stuff. That was the program in Detroit. People forget that the first half a year in Detroit, not great. He didn't have the reins. It took him a half year after he got the reins for it all to work. And all the offensive players in Detroit said, hey man, like year 1, we were just learning our roles. Year 2, we started to maximize our opportunities because we didn't have to worry about the how anymore. We were just worried about like which levers we were going to pull now that we knew how to pull them all. So a lot of people are sort of moving the goalposts on the Bears season, saying, well, they're first place in the NFC. They have to run the table. They have to be. No, they don't. It's already been a successful season. Are they going to make the playoffs? I think they probably are. Are they going to run the table? I doubt it very highly for all the reasons you mentioned. And they just haven't been that consistent. Wins at the end of the game are fickle, and they've gotten most of them. We saw how KC did it a year ago, and now, boy, regression sucks when it hits. So I don't think they have that sort of consistency. If you're just hoping they drop a game, yeah, they're probably going to drop a game for you. Are going to win all yours? You have to. That's the way it goes. It's crunch time in the NFL. So they're going to have the opportunity, the Hawks that are, to pick up that game when the Bears drop it. If I had to bet, if I had to put some money on it, I would probably say there's a greater likelihood that the Hawks will do that than the Bears would do that if we're talking about running the table and picking up the top seed.
EJ, I got a super chat here from Vincent who says, awesome guest today. Love the conversation. Where can folks find more from you? What's coming up from Bootleg Football and your Bears podcast?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we were on IR this week for the Bear podcast because my co-host got the flu from his son and had no voice. And usually we pick up our producer at that point. And so I reached out. I was like, hey, Mike, you ready to go? And he's like, I've got COVID. I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing it solo. And then I got a head cold. So once a week, we're on Bear Era. Yeah, it's IR for everybody. Once a week, we're on YouTube on Bear Era, usually on Wednesdays. In terms of Bootleg, 3 pieces of content a week, 2 public facing on YouTube. And then we've got a patron-only exclusive episode that drops every Friday or Saturday.
Well, man, this has been a blast. Thank you for giving us an hour of your Thursday. If you got folks have not checked out EJ and all the stuff going on in Bootleg and other places, make sure you do. Great stuff. And if the Bears end up playing the Seahawks in the playoffs, we're going to have some fun together. We'll bring you back for that.
That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be interesting to get together and watch that game because it's going to be, again, playoffs are great TV, and that would be it'd be a solid matchup. I'd probably tip my hat to the Hawks in that one, but it wouldn't be an easy game for either team.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think we got a lot of good football coming up. EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football, man. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right, that was EJ Snyder. Awesome stuff as always. Got some super chats. We'll get to those. Before we do, want to make sure folks take advantage of a deal that's not going to last that much longer. From between now and December 24th, if you use code HawkBlogger15 at SimplySeattle.com, you will get not only 15% off, but 5% of every purchase you make will go to the Fred Hutch Cancer Center's Patient and Family Assistance Fund, which provides vital help with transportation and temporary lodging for patients fighting for their lives. And if you use not only use the promo code HawkBlogger15, but you buy one of their Simply Good hoodies. They've got one with JSN Duncan on the goalpost. They've got one with Marshawn, doing his Beastquake dive into the end zone. They've got a Sean Kemp one. They got all sorts of great ones. $25 for a Simply Good hoodie. $5 additionally from that purchase will go to the Fred Hutch Fund. So do yourself a favor, get some great deals, do some good for other people, do some good for yourself. All that great stuff is coming at you, as well as going to jkboots.com/hawkblogger. That will put that in your browser, that full thing. That'll get you your own special promo code. Get the best deal on the best boots you're going to own. A Washington-based company, jkboots.com/hawkblogger. Make sure you download the Sleeper app. Great place to keep your fantasy football going. Follow the NBA, all your sports stuff. And for a time, you get $20 without making a deposit. Plus, use promo code HAWKS. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right. Let's get some of these super chats. We've got Nico, who says, last regular season game is in Levi's Stadium. What if last postseason game is there too? Will be an awesome story if we win the Super Bowl there. Not the first person to mention that, Nico. Certainly on a lot of Seahawks fans' minds, and they're honestly, it would be a tough thing to top. It would be as sweet as the first Super Bowl was, and that will always be the Seahawks first. Winning a game on the 49ers home field, winning a Super Bowl there, I dare to dream. I dare to dream. All right. Brent Yoendo says, still need to know the animation that Mike McDonald reminds you of. Yeah, it's I don't know if it's like, it might be Lego. It might be Lego animation. Like Lego or Nintendo, but I think it's Lego is like the black eyes. I think that's the one that kind of gets me with Mike McDonald. I would love to see Lego Mike McDonald. In fact, hold on. I'm going to see if this. I know. Well, this might get me in trouble because people hate when I use AI. Like, it's very clear people are very angry about that. But I mean, can we have a little bit of fun for a second, please? Can everyone just take a breath and make this person look like a Lego character? All right. I like having fun with some of this stuff, and this is not something I could do on my own. Let's see if AI comes through for us here. I'm opening myself up to all sorts of angry comments. I get it. I've heard you. I've read them. But we'll let it do its work here, and I'll see if this I don't know. I don't think it really did it. I'll show you what it came up with. It didn't really do it for me. This is what it did. Downloads. Where did it go? Where did it put it? Oh, it's trying to download it now. All right. I think it just did it. All right, here we go. Here is Lego Mike McDonald, according to AI. I don't think so. That's not what I had in mind. But, whatever. All right, let's Taker610 says, is Sundell expected back before playoffs? Yeah, Jalen Sundell is expected back. Well, he's at least eligible to come back next week off of IR. And Mike McDonald's already kind of talked about that they're looking forward to having him back. He's also talked about him potentially being a guy they look at right guard. It is maybe the biggest remaining question about this team in terms of its roster and in terms of its lineup is whether they're going to mess with that position or not. It's you heard EJ, like, I wouldn't mess with it. This is kind of what EJ was saying. I'm not sure I would mess with it, but here's the thing. What I would predict would happen if Jalen Sundell took over at right guard. I think that you would have fewer quick losses, like EJ was talking about. I think you'd have more assignment correct blocking in the run game. I think that you would potentially be less good at things like the barnyard. I think you'd be less good at some interior rushes, like especially any duo or any like man run games. I don't think Jalen Sundell moves people very much, and I think he gets moved. I think you'd be more susceptible to power rushers who just could walk Jalen Sundell back into Sam Darnold's lap. So I think he'd have some less clean pockets, which could lead to more balls going off of helmets and, fumbles and things like that. I don't think it's this, oh my God, everything would click and it would just be a million times better. I think it would be, some things would be better. And the question is whether the overall product on the field would be better because of those things. And the things that you give up would be mitigated by the things that you're gaining. I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. There'll be people that are like, see, we're way better with Jalen Sundell. And if we are, great. I'm open to it. But keep in mind, this isn't me making these decisions. The coaching staff, including all the coaches that have helped to completely turn around the offensive line, picked Anthony Bradford to start, even though he was not the guy that they went into the preseason expecting to start. They've stuck with him through the entire season. And to this point, they have not put in somebody else. So they clearly believe that what they're getting from him is more than what they're losing, despite what fans think. I'm just sharing my analysis in that case. I'm not sitting here telling you that Anthony Bradford should be up for a Pro Bowl consideration. I don't believe that that's the case. So that's where we are. And I think the Jalen Sundell piece is going to be interesting. I see Amy has got sharing some news that Russ is going to be a CBS guest analyst this week. We were talking about this in the Real Hawk Talk chat. I got to say this, man. Like, loved Russ as our quarterback. Like, loved watching him play for us. I don't love color commentating, the state of color commentating for the NFL at all. Like, I don't even like play-by-play commentating really right now. I think it's really, really the worst maybe it's ever been. Part of it is just really boring. And you kind of want your color commentator to be someone that you'd want to watch a football game with, like, and get a beer with and hang out with. And like John Madden's the perfect like example of that, right? I think Brian Baldinger would be a good example of someone like that, where you just want to listen to them talk. I think they've gotten a little high-minded, like Tom Brady and Tony Romo, all the quarterback analysis. I don't know, like that's fun. Like, give me more offensive linemen. Give me some more crazy give me like Steve Tasker. Like, give me some crazy special teams guys that are just kind of wild. Give me some more tight ends. Although Greg Olsen is polarizing. I'm not a big Greg Olsen guy because he seems to be biased against the Seahawks. But I would take some of the crazy tight, like, I don't know. And Russell, of all the things, is he like the most dynamic personality that you want to listen to talk for 3.5 hours? Not really. Like, not me. I don't know. Like, he does not strike me as the guy that you want to listen to talk about almost anything for that long. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong, but like Michael Bennett, that's a good example of kind of the crazy that I'd want to listen to. I find him very entertaining, and it doesn't matter if it's the best commentary. It's meant to be someone who adds to the experience. And I don't think a lot of these guys add to the experience. In fact, I think they detract from the experience. Neo Pangea says, strongly agree with you on AI. It's new scary tech, but just to say AI is bad, it will only lead to your irrelevancy. I'm not going to start an AI debate. I almost posted a video just to say, I've heard you about AI. Here's how I feel. I disagree. I'm still going to use it at times. I've used it literally twice out of like 1,000 thumbnails that I've made, and people have been up in arms. I think it's over the top. I really do. But I don't want to start an AI debate because it fits in the category of let's keep the conversation about football. So that's how I ended up deciding not to respond to every single comment about AI, and why I didn't post a video just about the AI usage. It will still get used at times, but I am not going to engage in the debate about it. So appreciate everybody else joining and watching the show today. If you haven't already given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. We're getting closer to 30,000 subs. When we get there, I've promised that I'm going to buy some tickets to the next Seahawks game. At this point, that might be a playoff game. So that might be the Rams game on Thursday night, like depending on how quickly we get there. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on TikTok, on Instagram, all those places. We're growing like leaps and bounds on Instagram, which is really cool. And just know I am really, really grateful for all of you for tuning in. And thank you for hanging out. I will be back with you tomorrow with Mike Sando, and we'll see what we have to talk about there. And then this weekend, heading to Atlanta, Jeff Simmons will be with me in Atlanta. So we'll have some fun there and do some great stuff. Until then, have a great rest of your Thursday. I'm Brandon M. Hauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings.